How to unite now. Panic. The queen is dead.
So we are on the last day of filming.
Yeah.
2.5 years.
It seems a lot longer. It's been a great experience, reliving it, but also kind of trying to expunge all the kind of the weight and that we've been carrying around. Well, that's how I feel about it anyway. We've talked about giving interviews in the past, because I know that they'll just take the bits that they want anyway.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really matter what you because of course they always start off with, so where are you from? Yeah, I'm from Manchester, and how many brothers and sisters? And you're like, oh right, he's a really nice bloke, this. And then after sort of like 3 hours of interview, and then they get to the Morrissey court case and Johnny court case, and then it's like that's the bit that they're going to use. So I think everything that I've felt we've talked about as being kind of, I've been pretty kind of candid about just how the Smiths were. It's not for me as an experience. Because nobody can. There's been so many people talking about the Smiths that weren't actually in the band, and it's from mine and Andy's perspective. It's obviously a pretty unique perspective. You can't really get anybody else to tell you what. You can talk about what it must have been like, but we've been talking about what it was like and how it was and how it is really, and also post Smiths.
Yeah.
Hence the fact that we're here now.
Talk about that beginning bit then, where basically you two were kind of thrown together by, you got in a band separately.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just weird. I mean, I suppose the only two people who actually knew each other in the band was me and Johnny. He'd known Morrissey, maybe a month or something like that, and then Mike was sort of a friend of a friend.
Yeah.
Even though he was sort of in the band before me. And I was sort of last to join, so I felt a bit like the new kid on the block anyway, but luckily I knew Johnny, so I sort of, at least I had Johnny to talk to, you know what I mean? But
yeah. So had you heard of Andy before that day?
I don't think I had. I mean, obviously when we were that first rehearsal with Dale, I remember through the kind of mushroom fog, is this going to work, really? I mean, I'd worked with bass players that weren't, great bass players, but at least they could play bass. They could play. Yeah. And so, I mean, I knew he'd had a pretty short shelf life anyway, because of the fact that he couldn't play bass, really.
Right, yeah.
And then when the first time I met Andy was when we did that recording in Drone. And it was just really, this is Andy. And it was like, hello, he swims like a fish. This is Andy, the bass player. And it was really weird because, of course, it's just not the kind of, obviously it's not the best environment to sort of like do a demo with a bloke, A, you've never met before, and B, you've never played before. I mean, it'd be different if it was a keyboard player or a sax player. Because, of course, they'd be kind of embellishing as opposed to actually being the rhythm section, the driving sort of like sound of what we are. And you listen back to that demo, and it's as good as anything that we did. Really.
It's instantly happened.
Yeah, and it's weird. I mean, although me and Andy, we've worked together since the Smiths. Every now and again we have a play together, and it's so funny. Every time we get in the room, there's never any kind of like, it goes like this, or we just sit down and play. Right. And I played a track on the radio show that I've got at the Revolution on Sunday called "Pretty Girls Make Graves," and the bass and the drums. If you just listen to them, I mean, people don't, but if you do, and I mean, I did on Sunday and listened to it, it's such a weird kind of sound that we had.
Yeah.
It's really unique. It's just not your average sort of like sounding rhythm section. It just sounded really strange. I mean, it was '84. It was very early days for the Smiths when we did that, but it worked, and it worked well. What have you found?
That in the ice.
Is it?
Keeps going up and down. I don't know.
Like
a seed, I think.
Oh. It's got legs though. A seed with legs.
It's wiggling.
It's true. Hold on, your pint's going down. It's drinking.
Every time I try and get it, it keeps going. It's a seed, I think. I hope.
It's not man seed, is it?
No.
It's like a slug.
You little git.
You got it?
No.
Oh!
10p short.
10p short. Oh, you have to wait.
The bubbles.
Come straight back up.
Bubbles bring it up here.
Hey, here we we go. Fuck off, Steve. Come on.
Do you want to
Well,
spot?
obviously, Andy was listening to every word I was saying.
And what do you
We'll
think?
get the seed. I don't. Yeah, what do you think? I don't know. Next time it comes up, I'll get it. All right.
Right, sorry. If I start choking, you'll know what on.
Ooh, it's coming back up. Get it. Go on. You
No,
got to get it now.
It's kind of weightless, isn't it? It's weird.
Yeah, well, we can wait.
It's the best bit.
So yeah.
What?
Well, we're trying to. Andy's trying to get sort his seed out.
Oh, yeah.
Hey.
hell is
It's a. Oh, it's not a.
No, it's a seed, isn't it?
Are you sure? Sure it's. I thought it was, like a grub.
Yeah, I did.
But it was-
We grow
Yeah.
the seed.
So that was the seed thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, those were, it is like 23 years ago, so I suppose you can kind of think of it in 24, in fact, 82 when I joined, but you think at the time, I suppose people, there wasn't anything like that really. I mean,
No, it was at odds with everything.
Yeah, but it was just, obviously in hindsight you think, well, especially with the kind of the passage of time, people kind of look back and think, well, so what? A bloke with it showing his ass on the cover of Hand in Glove, big deal. But it was a big deal.
Oh, God, yeah.
It was a big deal. I mean, we're only just out of the 70s.
Yeah, so basically you both got thrown together instantly in a bubble that was observed like hell, so you had to learn to get on.
Yeah. I mean, it was like you just said, we were literally thrown together, like hotel rooms, just like, but after sound check, we'd spend like 3 or 4 hours together, and I suppose we got to know each other really quickly because of that, because we were, nowhere to escape to really, didn't we?
No choice.
Yeah, so we used to go out for meals and stuff like that, just the two of us, or go and have a few drinks and stuff, because when you're in a band, there's an hour on stage and then maybe an hour and a half sound check, and the rest of the day you just sat around.
But because the four of us were in it together, and we were, like I say, what we were bringing to the table was the Smiths. If it wouldn't have been me and Andy, then it wouldn't have been the Smiths.
Yeah.
It would have been something else. It would have been Morrissey and Johnny with another 2 players. And then,
Wouldn't have come up with them bits that you came up with.
well, no, they wouldn't. And I mean, tracks like What She Said, Barbara's and Begins at Home, those tracks, would they have been like that? They wouldn't. I mean, how soon is now the bass line in? In Shoplifters of the World, the bass line in that?
This charming man.
Absolutely. Well, right, I've only got 10 fingers. Let me get the 2 sets of my shoes off. Every bass line that Andy's played,
Yeah.
it's phenomenal.
Well,
And
I was used to, years ago when I was into it and I didn't know anything, I used to lock onto the bass all the time on that.
Yeah.
It was like doing this very insistent melody.
It's the only band that I've ever listened to where I purposefully listened to the bass. We were talking earlier about Pretty Girls Make Graves. Listen to the bass line.
Yeah.
What the fuck's that? What's he doing there, Loon? But it's absolutely
It's
brilliant.
out and I'm
I mean,
brilliant.
the guitar's playing off the bass on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's similar to Mike, really. You're that busy concentrating on the bass lines and getting that right and getting it all locked in that it's not until, like, a month or so later, then it's when you start taking, it was cassettes, wasn't it? Back in those days, so you start taking the cassettes out and listening. And I had 3 brothers at home, and at least one. Well, they're all into music. One of them used to play bass as well, Phil. So he used to listen to it, and then I think he was the first to sort of know. He was like, "What's he singing about there?" And I was like, "I don't know." And
Boy in the Butchers with
yeah,
what?
he was like, "What?" I never played it with my dad ever. You know what I mean? He's like, "Oh, how's the band going?" I was like, "Oh, it's okay, yeah." And then I told him we've got this single coming out. And of course, the first single, the front cover's like this guy with his arse out.
Yeah.
I think one of my brothers said, "Oh, have you seen the single, Dad?" And I was like, "Shh, no." And so he heard it anyway. That's charming, that is.
No, that's the next one.
Yeah, so I think my dad wasn't really, he used to come and see the Smiths, but he never really got Morrissey.
you know, we were the band, so the music was the most important part to us. And then it only came at a later stage for me with Morrissey's words. I mean, I showed you that I've got those lyrics that he wrote down for me for Headmaster Ritual.
Yeah.
When I said to him, you know, can you write down the lyrics for me? And I've still got them, you know, on this bit of paper that he wrote them down. And you just read the lyrics, and it's just, it's weird because you kind of, you know, you think about Morrissey as a poet, but it's more than that. It's because it's a band.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's a singer as well. So it's not just poetry. I mean, you can't sort of like take Larkin or Rusty or whatever and put them to music. You know,
Yeah.
he's a singer, but his words are very poetic, and he's one of the, well, I think probably the finest lyricist that's ever lived.
Yeah, without a doubt, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you know, people talk about great songs, great songwriting. Nobody comes close because he's unique.
Yeah.
I've never seen anything of the like since, and that's why, at the time when we, you know, the early days in the Smiths, I think we were all so, it was all happening so fast, and you were talking before about us all being thrown together, that we couldn't really kind of grasp what was, you know, the importance of really what was happening.
Yeah, because you were busy actually doing it.
We were doing it, and
Yeah.
I mean, they're thinking about hi-hats, thinking about, you know, capos and what have you, trying to get the band sounding right. And then when you actually kind of, when I did realise, it was just another kind of immense, kind of uplifting thing
Oh, God, yeah,
of
yeah.
actually realising how great these words were. It's something that can never be bettered, really.
Yeah.
But that kind of intensity and that clever and that wit and that brilliance can also be used in a kind of detrimental form as well, I think.
Oh, and it's negative.
Yeah, because
Manifestation.
because I think if somebody's that clever and that smart and that witty and that sharp and that on it, that when they're being nasty, they can be
God.
just as well as more terrifying than anybody else. And I think
Yeah.
Morrissey's got that in him.
Even what song was it where he wrote about Jeff Travis?
Frankly, Mr.
Yeah,
Shankly.
writing bloody awful poetry, and and we all sort of knew who it was. Well, we didn't. It got explained to us later that Jeff had sent Morrissey these poems,
Right.
and obviously because like Moz had fallen out with him, he's just stuck that in there just as a stinger, really, and it must have really hurt Jeff, you know what I mean? But
Loads of artists have done that, haven't they?
Yeah.
taking it out on the yeah.
but
But it was just so, you know, the whole of the world knew that Jeff Travis wrote shit poetry. You know what I mean? That was just a classic Mozza move. You know what I mean?
The intensity of the band that we, as a group, and what we were trying to put across, came across as a group. I don't know. I mean, I can't speak for Johnny and Morrissey, but I suppose if it was me that was turning back the clock, then I probably would have had it different. I would have had equality. And you know, I mean, in U2, I couldn't imagine anybody, you know, Bono saying, "Look, Larry."
Bono.
Bono saying to Larry Mullen, "Sorry, Larry, you're not going to get as much as the Edge for playing gigs." It just doesn't make any sense, really. It doesn't make any sense.
Causes all this kerfuffle.
Yes, and that's why there's just me and Andy sitting here and not the other two lads.
You know, it's a shame, isn't it?
It is a shame. I suppose, you know, people make the decision. They make, like I said, they make the bed and they lie in it, and it's something that you just have to kind of deal with.
There were decisions made at a very young age under a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
And like you said earlier, I think once you've committed yourself to those decisions, it's hard to go back and admit that you were wrong. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
You know, you both came from kind of different musical backgrounds. You were into like Neil Young stuff and getting into funk and that, and like you were punk basically. You know, and that's what you'd done. You know, how did you work out that?
trial and error, really. I mean, we rehearsed hell of a lot, didn't we? We used to, every night for like 4 or 5 hours.
It didn't work at first, though, did it?
No, there came a
I know
point.
you were very frustrated.
Yeah, they did. I mean, there just came a point on some of like what should have been the sort of more mellow songs, and it's not your fault. I mean, you were punk drumming and you were kind of going for it, and it was just missing some of the subtleties, wasn't it? Really, and I was just saying like I just had a little quiet word, and it's like, Mike, you know, the bass is supposed to go with the bass drum and vice versa, sort of thing, and
Are you?
But he took
You
it all.
are.
It took
Shut it.
No, but he took it all on board. You didn't throw a hissy strop, did you? He took it all on board, and by the end of the rehearsal, it was making more sense, wasn't it?
Well, I had a lot of respect for Andy's playing, obviously and Johnny's, because I knew that they were players really, whereas I was just when I say just, I mean I was a punk drummer, whereas it was more about the intensity. Of
and
the
lights
track.
and the shades and that.
Yeah, well, no, the opposite.
Oh, punk, yes.
Yeah. So
yeah.
I'm kind of going for it every time, every song, going for it.
Yeah, I know that
and
one.
of course, Andy's there, kind of, the idea of a sustained note. I'd be like, fill the gap, fill the gap. Yeah. I'll put that in.
I think out of all, out of me, Johnny and Mike, I think through the sort of 4 or 5 years of the Smiths, Mike came a hell of a lot further, and honed his talent than myself and Johnny did.
Yeah.
Well, I think that was through, obviously, necessity. It wasn't, if I wasn't going to carry it off, then it wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
And it just had to be. In 1985, when we recorded Meet His Murder, and I remember we were in a studio where it was a residential studio, and we were sitting down, we were talking about the rights and wrongs of eating meat and stuff. And I remember Morrissey obviously being kind of quite vocal about the cruelty aspect in farming and also in eating meat and the end products. And I was a carnivore. I didn't eat. The only kind of vegetables that I'd eat would probably be potatoes. I didn't eat any other kind of vegetable. And I remember him, talking about the wrongs of farming and stuff. And it made me vegetarian then. That was in '85.
Well, in that one conversation.
That one conversation, that was enough, really. I mean, obviously, after we'd recorded Meet His Murder, I thought about the lyrical content there.
Mine took a little bit longer than. Yeah, he made me vegetarian. There's one time I think we were all eating in a service station, and I think Craig might have joined the band, and even Craig had twigged on like, you don't order bacon in front of Morrissey. And I was like, oh, probably your finest English breakfast, please. And then it came, and then I looked up, and Morrissey left the table, and then like slow but surely everyone like peeled off, and I was just like sat there sat there with this huge plate of meat, going, oh, but I don't think I'm going to do this again. You just you couldn't enjoy it.
Yeah, and I mean, after thinking about it, I thought, well, yeah, he's right. He's right, and I mean, even now, I'm quite vocal about my vegetarian beliefs. I suppose it's the kind of the strength of obviously of his lyrics that it can have such an effect on people, and the fact that it's. I mean, my whole family's vegetarian, and I think I'm really kind of quite militant in the same way that's why the iconography, the image that's on Meet His Murder of the guy with the helmet on with Meet His Murder, because as far as Morrissey was concerned, it has to be. You can't just say, "Oh, please don't eat meat."
Oh, yeah.
It has to be that kind of militaristic, of a kind of, because the animals don't have a voice of themselves.
Well, in that video, with in the slaughterhouse.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I think people should have to see that.
Anything with a face, I just don't eat really.
Yeah.
And I think it's Morrissey really brought it home to me about the how precious life is.
But I think a lot of people they go to the supermarket and it's just nicely pre-packed little squares of pinkness. They don't see it as an animal, do they? They're just like, oh yeah, yeah.
Absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, even like things like people don't understand that, like turkeys, they're not flightless. They can, the birds that can fly up to like 40 miles an hour. The only reason why they can't fly and they're so big is because they've been force-fed to be so massive. Because of course a big turkey is a good turkey. Well, people don't realise the way that's been achieved.
Yeah.
They don't want to see the way that it's been achieved. That's entirely due to Morrissey's lyrics, because I think I'd probably still be eating meat now if he wouldn't have made me aware of the horror and the injustice that's meted out to animals as we're speaking now. Well, I've noticed over the last say 5 years, because it used to be quite uncool to like the Smiths, and any kind of references to the Smiths were kind of frowned upon. And then in the last 5 years, it seems as though people have come out of the woodwork and it's like guilty pleasures. It's like, yeah, well, actually, I did like the Smiths. I've noticed that quite a lot lately. I mean, Andy was saying there about the Queen is Dead, the cover thing on the NME, and that when the most influential band of the last 50 years, the Smiths were #1, and Beatles were #2. I mean, when you see something like that, it's frightening, really, the size. But it is, it's terrifying because, again, you don't think of that when you're in the band and you're doing what you're doing because, you know, whether it be in, you know, the Hoax or the Smiths, the same intensity applies when you're playing or you're recording or you're touring or you're doing TV. There's nothing that you can really kind of, there's no half measures, really. So it's the same intensity, but when you get that kind of feedback, I mean, that's what it's all about, really. Being in a band is getting that kind of feedback, because then you feel kind of justified in doing all that work and all the effort and time that's put into creating something that when it comes back like that, then it becomes kind of pretty special, really.
It's weird though, like getting all the praise after we've split up. Do you know what I mean? Because we didn't necessarily get it when we were. Obviously, the Smiths fans did, but now it's more of a. It seems to have more of a broad appeal, do you know what I mean? So it's frustrating in a way now, like 20 years later, people saying how great we were, rather than, would have been nice, you know, 20 years ago, people saying how great we are, you know, rather than how great we were. So it's weird in that respect. A
small group of people did that, didn't they?
Well, but it was like a kind of secret sect. It was like the people that knew it, the people that got it a lot. And it was that kind of, you know, and at gigs, and people talk about, you know, that lazy journalism where you see people saying, oh, the Smiths miserable.
Oh, God,
And I mean, they obviously never came to a Smiths gig because I don't think miserable would have been in one of the superlatives that I would have used.
No.
It wouldn't have even been in the top 500 because the energy that was expelled. I mean, I remember when we played in Salford at the uni the night after the GMX gig, and Gary, is it Gary from Easterhouse?
Yeah,
the drummer,
drummer,
yeah. And he was saying to me, he was at the gig, he said people were crying and hugging each other, and this is like before Ecstasy. He said he's never seen anything like it before or since. And I mean, obviously we were up on stage, so we didn't get to see that, but we kind of felt that energy that was kind of coming from the crowd, and then of course that kind of spurred us on, and then it just kind of made it bigger and bigger and bigger. But I mean, Smiths gigs were pretty special. And I know that when the Smiths played Manchester, we played at the Palace Theatre. And I remember saying to Morrissey, I could probably, you know, play here 4 or 5 nights and sell it out every night. And he said, yeah, but if we did that, then you get people saying, you know, did you go to the Tuesday gig or did you go to the Wednesday gig? Oh, and I went to the Friday, it was much better. And then it kind of takes the sheen off it, really. It was like I was at the Palace gig when the Smiths played in '85. And it becomes very precious then. And again, that's another great feeling as well in retrospect. Smith's gigs were massive. I mean, even when we played the Free Trade Hall, the first 2 rows, or I think 3 rows, were completely demolished.
Yeah, because they tried to keep it seated, and it was like everyone was supposed to sit down, and they just wouldn't have it. We were saying take the seats out. I think we'd done a London gig a couple of days before at Brixton or something like that, where it was, you know, everyone was going nuts, and they said no, it's a seated gig. This is, you know. This is a theatre, blah, blah, and wooden seats and wooden velvet, basically, and they were in bits, weren't they?
Yeah, I remember coming out afterwards.
There was nothing left
all
of it.
there was left was just the metal post. I mean, it looked dangerous, really, but the intensity.
Lots of sawdust everywhere.
Did any of that get frightening?
It was kind of quite terrifying, but it's tempered with adrenaline and the excitement. I mean, that's why when we used to have the stage invasions, they were kind of monitored, so it wasn't, you know, too chaotic.
They were monitored, but 9 times out of 10, Morrissey would have said something derogatory about the security because they were being a little bit heavy-handed. So by the time there was a stage invasion, the security just said, "Oh, fuck it," you know, and then it just got out of hand, and they were like, "You've started this, you know, enjoy it," sort of thing, and it ended up, well, 9 times out of 10 it ended up in chaos, and we just have to run off.
I can only think of like the kind of intensity that we were giving out, because, you know, we never took gigs lightly. It wasn't just like, oh, here's another gig, you know, where are we tonight, or we're in Hull, you know, it didn't feel like that. It was like every gig, as far as I was concerned, I wanted it to be the best gig that these people had ever seen.
Yeah.
And not only a selfish thing about me wanting to have a great gig. Obviously, I wanted that to happen. I wanted the band to have a great gig, but I wanted the people that had paid good money to come and see us and really have that kind of. I wanted them to celebrate how great I thought we were, and invariably they did.
But early days, we used to tell all the fans, oh, we're staying at such and such hotel, and we used to meet them all back in the hotel bar, didn't we? Like, there used to be like 15 fans, and us just, and we'd have a drink for a couple of hours. And I mean, that was very early days, but I mean, we tried to keep that sentimentality, I suppose, of that we could, you know, please all the fans, and I think that's why it got out of hand.
Yeah, because it just goes too big for all that, doesn't it?
Yeah, and those people that we were letting back, then when it got too big, they were the ones that were kind of having a go at us.
They were pissed
saying,
off.
you sold out. Well, it was just inevitable. We just couldn't. We had no control over it once it got to a certain stage.
Once we got on, you know, once we made a dent in the charts and we were on top of the pops, a lot of the original fans were like so pissed off because it was so precious to them, and yeah, they just, you know, they didn't want the rest of the country or the rest of the world to know anything about us. And
the Beatles fans were like that, weren't
yeah,
they?
but we had no control over that.
The inevitable conclusion is that if you want to be big and you do become bigger, then that kind of personal touch is going to go. But we always wanted to try and retain it anyway. Reason behind doing the DVD that we're doing now is really to put mine and Andy's impressions of what it was like being in the Smiths. But actually, the way it came about wasn't a conscious decision to, this is what we need to do. I mean, I've thought about doing a book and thought about doing, you know, well, I've done TV interviews before, and again, you know, they seem to have this idea of what they want, and then they just edit it how they want it to be perceived. And the way this came about was, I mean, I met you obviously years ago in V2. You'd been in V2 when I was in the Hoax.
I mean, originally it was just supposed to be us, you cataloguing our trip across America doing a DJ tour, and then it's kind of grown into this really, which is good because it's never really been done before, you know.
No, well, it won't be done again.
No, and it's not, like you say, we've not set out to, you know, let's make a DVD. It's just happened naturally and organically, and
well, I remember
here we are, you know, on the last day of filming, and yeah, this is 2 years down the line, and it was supposed to be, you know, 3 weeks of filming. And
I was as interested in, say, like bands like Buzzcocks. I want to know everything about them. I want to know what it was like to be John Marr. I wanted to know what it was like to be the drummer in Buzzcocks. There's been so many films and DVDs and stuff and programmes that have been made about the Smiths, but not really from being there.
it's just a good way to reset the balance, really, and
Yeah, because everything
set
in
the
this,
record straight.
well, everything that's been in the film is, you know, there's nothing in there that I can say, hold on a minute, you know, they've taken that out of context. This is what it was like. This was the experience that mine and Andy had within the Smiths. I mean, again, it's a shame that, you know, Johnny and Morrissey aren't on the other two chairs.
Yeah, absolutely.
And us talking about it, but that's not going to happen.
But in a way, that'd be a different story.
Absolutely,
You know,
and absolutely, and in a way, you know, you can look at it. I mean, I've sometimes thought when I get a phone call for an interview, I always think, are they just asking me because it's not, oh, Michael did it, the drummer, and in a kind of belittling way. When in fact, my perspective is, I wouldn't say it's just as important, but it's
equally as valid, isn't it?
Well, I was there.
Yeah.
There wasn't anything. I didn't miss anything. I wasn't like, oh, I only turned up for the last sort of like hour or the last sort of like, you know, last year or the last 6 months. I was there from sort of like being in that room in Manchester when the group got together to the meeting when we sat down at the table in Gilles Fish Bar in London when it was the band splitting up. And it's, so how more relevant do you want to be? And it's, you know, I saw everything. There was nothing that kind of passed me by, and it was to kind of put it from our perspective is as relevant as it is coming from, you know, Johnny or Morrissey.
But by the same token, what we never wanted to do was to piss anybody off, you know what I mean? And the whole purpose of this has not been to, you know, piss Johnny or Morrissey off. Quite the reverse, really.
Because it was a fantastic time, and that's what we've tried to put across, the greatness of what we had.
See you later.